Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before we dive into today's story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications, because what I'm about to share with you is going to leave you absolutely speechless. This isn't just another tale of betrayal. This is about the moment I discovered my identical twin sister had been living my life for an entire week, sleeping in my bed, raising my children, and my husband, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, never even noticed the difference. My name is Emily, and if you think you know where this story is going, trust me, you don't. Picture this. It's a rainy Tuesday afternoon in Seattle. I'm walking through my front door after a doctor's appointment, my head pounding from a migraine that won't quit. The house is quiet. Too quiet. My kids are at daycare. My husband Mark should be at the office, grinding away at his tech job like he always does. But as I push open our bedroom door, my entire world shatters in an instant. There they are, tangled in our sheets. My husband's hand on her thigh, his lips against her neck, whispering the kind of intimate things he used to whisper to me. But here's the thing that makes my blood turn to ice. He's calling her by my name. Emily, he murmurs, pulling her closer. Except it's not me. It's Sarah, my identical twin sister wearing my clothes, my wedding ring glinting on her finger as she laughs that familiar laugh, our laugh. The smell hits me like a physical blow. His cologne mixed with her perfume, my perfume, the one I wear every single day. The sheets I'd washed just days before, now wrapped around their bodies. I freeze in that doorway, my heart slamming against my ribs like it's trying to escape my chest. And in that moment, everything clicks into place with horrifying clarity. The business trip I supposedly took last week? I wasn't on any trip. I was in the hospital, recovering from emergency appendicitis surgery, barely able to move without pain shooting through my abdomen. And Sarah? Sweet, helpful Sarah had offered to stay with Mark and the kids. "I'll handle everything, sis," she'd said with that smile I'd trusted my whole life. "No one will even miss you." Miss me. He didn't even know I was gone. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of building a life together, raising 2 beautiful children, sacrificing my career, my dreams, my identity, all of it reduced to nothing because my own husband couldn't tell me apart from my sister. They thought they could play me for a fool. They thought the sweet, devoted housewife would never find out, never fight back, never make them pay. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't just the sweet, forgiving Emily anymore. I had resources they couldn't imagine, patience they'd underestimated, and a plan forming in the shadows of my mind that would dismantle their worlds piece by calculated piece. Stick around, because this isn't just about heartbreak. It's about justice served cold, calculated, and completely deserved. Let me take you back to where it all began, before the betrayal that would redefine everything I thought I knew about love and family. Mark and I met during our junior year at the University of Washington. He was the ambitious computer science major with big dreams of changing the tech world, and I was the marketing student who believed in him when no one else did. We got married right after graduation, young, broke, and ridiculously in love. Those early years were hard. We lived in a cramped studio apartment in Capitol Hill, surviving on ramen and hope while Mark worked entry-level positions and I climbed the ladder at a boutique marketing firm. Then came Lily. Beautiful, perfect Lily with Mark's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. When she was born 6 years ago, we made the decision together, or so I thought. Mark's career at TechVance Solutions was taking off, demanding longer hours, more travel, bigger responsibilities. My job required the same. Someone had to be there for our daughter. "It's just temporary," Mark had promised, kissing my forehead in the hospital. "Once I make senior developer, we'll get help. You can go back to work." But temporary became permanent when Max arrived 2 years later. Another perfect child, another reason to stay home. I threw myself into motherhood with the same intensity I'd given my career. PTA president, volunteer coordinator at their Montessori school, the mom who brought homemade cupcakes shaped like dinosaurs to every birthday party. I transformed our modest 3-bedroom house in the Maple Leaf neighborhood into a home, painted walls, planted gardens, created a sanctuary for my family. Mark, meanwhile, ascended. Junior developer to senior developer to team lead to director of product development. The money got better. The hours got worse. Business trips to San Francisco, Austin, Boston, late nights at the office became the norm. "Just pushing through this launch," he'd text. "Order takeout. I'll be home by 10. 10 became midnight. Midnight became him sleeping on the office couch. Somewhere in those 8 years, we'd stopped being Mark and Emily, passionate partners building a life. We became logistics managers, coordinating schedules and splitting household duties with the efficiency of divorced co-parents. Intimacy faded to obligation. Conversation shrank to, "Did you pay the electric bill?" and "Max has a dentist appointment Thursday." I told myself it was normal. Marriage evolution. The price of success and parenthood. And then there was Sarah. My identical twin, my other half. My opposite in every way that mattered. While I chose stability, Sarah chased chaos. Failed acting career in Los Angeles. A string of dead-end relationships with men who promised everything and delivered nothing. Jobs that never lasted more than 6 months. Barista, boutique manager, yoga instructor, social media coordinator. She'd call me crying, broke, desperate. "Em, I just need $5,000 to get back on my feet. I swear I'll pay you back." I never said no. How could I? She was my sister, my twin. We'd shared a womb, shared a childhood, shared everything until our paths diverged in college. Over the years, I'd given her close to $60,000. Money Mark didn't know about, pulled from the private accounts I'd kept from my working days. Family helps family, Mom used to say before she passed. So I helped, and helped, and helped. Sarah visited often, too often maybe, sleepovers when Mark traveled. "Keep you company," she'd say, playing with the kids, drinking my wine, wearing my clothes. We were identical down to the freckle pattern across our noses. Sometimes even I had to look twice at photos to remember which twin was which. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew him. I thought I'd built something unshakable. God, I was blind. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Tangled, intimate, my husband's hands on my sister's body. Mark came home around midnight, whistling, completely oblivious. He kissed my forehead like nothing had changed. "How was your day, babe?" I'd already showered, scrubbing my skin raw, trying to wash away the contamination of what I'd witnessed. "Fine," I managed. Exhausting. He didn't notice the tremor in my voice, the way my hands shook as I climbed into bed beside him. Why would he? He hadn't noticed his own wife had been replaced for 7 days straight. The next morning, after Mark left for work and the kids were at school, I texted Sarah. Coffee. Our usual spot, noon. "Don't make me come find you." She showed up 20 minutes late to the little cafe on 65th, wearing my burgundy sweater, the cashmere one Mark gave me for Christmas 2 years ago, and my leather jacket. The audacity made my blood boil, but I kept my face neutral, hands wrapped around a chai latte I couldn't taste. "What's the emergency?" Sarah slid into the booth, all casual confidence, ordering an oat milk latte with an extra shot. "You sounded intense in your text." I waited until the barista left. Then I leaned forward, voice low and deadly calm. "What the hell, Sarah?" Her eyes widened with practiced innocence. "What are you talking about?" "Don't." The word cracked like a whip. "I came home yesterday. I saw you." With Mark in my bed. For exactly 3 seconds, she looked caught. Then that infuriating smirk spread across her face. Our face. And she stirred her latte like we were discussing the weather. "Oh, come on, Em. It was just a bit of fun. Mark's been complaining for months about how boring things have gotten between you two. I just spiced things up a little." "Fun?" My voice rose despite myself. Other patrons glanced over. I lowered my tone to a hiss. "You slept with my husband. You pretended to be me. You tucked my children into bed and then crawled into my sheets with my partner. That's not fun, Sarah. That's betrayal." She took a long sip, studying me over the rim of her cup. and he loved every second of it. Face it, sis, you're the vanilla version, predictable, safe, boring. I gave him passion, adventure. The version of you he actually wants. She leaned in, eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. He didn't even suspect, not once, not in bed, not at breakfast, not when I kissed him goodbye every morning. What does that tell you about your marriage? The words hit like physical blows, each one precisely aimed to cause maximum damage. You're a monster, I breathed. I'm honest. She shrugged, examining her nails. My nail polish, I noticed. The coral shade I kept on my dresser. Maybe you should thank me for keeping him interested. At the rate you two were going, he'd have been looking for someone else eventually anyway. At least this way it stayed in the family. Thank her. She wanted me to thank her for violating every sacred boundary we'd ever had, for stealing my identity, my life, my husband. My hands clenched into fists under the table, nails digging into palms. Every instinct screamed to lunge across the table, to slap that smug expression off her face, to make her hurt the way she'd hurt me. But I didn't, because beneath the rage, beneath the devastation, something colder was crystallizing. Sarah had always been like this, taking my things, testing my boundaries, pushing to see what she could get away with. My favorite sweater in high school, my college boyfriend she'd kissed at a party as a joke. The job opportunity she'd accidentally mentioned, she'd applied for using my recommendations. Every time I'd forgiven her. Family, right? Not anymore. You're right, I said quietly, standing up. Sarah's smirk faltered at my calm tone. I should thank you. You've opened my eyes to exactly who you are, and who Mark is. Consider this the last time we meet as sisters. Oh, please. She rolled her eyes. You'll forgive me. You always do. I looked at her, really looked at this woman who shared my face but not my soul, and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Keep thinking that. I walked out, leaving her with the bill. Behind me, I heard her laugh. She had no idea what was coming. That evening, Mark came home at a reasonable hour for once, 6:30 p.m., just as I was plating dinner. Spaghetti carbonara, his favorite. The kids were already at the table, Lily chattering about her art project, Max showing me a drawing of what might have been a dragon or possibly a dog. Normal. Everything needed to seem completely normal. Smells amazing, babe, Mark said, loosening his tie and kissing my cheek. The same cheek he'd kissed when I was Sarah. The thought made my stomach turn, but I smiled. How was work? I asked, setting down plates. Brutal. Thompson's writing me about the Q4 deliverables. He launched into a story about his boss while I mechanically ate, tasting nothing. Then, during a lull while the kids argued over who got the last breadstick, I made my move. So, I said casually, twirling pasta, how was last week, while I was gone? Mark looked up, something flickering across his face, too quick to identify. Last week? It was great. Fine. You know, the usual chaos with these two. He gestured at Lily and Max. Just fine? I pressed gently. Nothing. Memorable? His eyes met mine, and for a heartbeat, I thought he'd crack. Confess everything. Beg forgiveness. Instead, he grinned, that boyish, charming grin that had made me fall in love a decade ago. Actually, yeah. Best week we've had in ages, babe. You were, I don't know, different. In a good way, more spontaneous, more... He glanced at the kids and lowered his voice. Present. Different. The word landed like a slap. More spontaneous, more present. Everything I'd stopped being in his eyes, apparently. Everything Sarah had pretended to be while wearing my skin. Different how? I heard myself ask, voice steady despite the knife twisting in my chest. Just more like your old self, I guess. Fun, playful, like when we first met. He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I miss that version of you. It was nice to have her back. That version. Her. Not me. The woman he'd been with. The woman he'd laughed with and slept with and confided in. That wasn't even me, and he preferred her. That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing. Sleep wouldn't come. Food tasted like cardboard. My body felt foreign, wrong, like I was the imposter now. The next morning, Lily studied me over her cereal, those perceptive 6-year-old eyes missing nothing. "Mommy, why are you sad?" "I'm not sad, sweetheart," I lied, forcing brightness into my voice. "You look sad. Your eyes are puffy." Mark glanced up from his phone. "You do look tired, Em. Everything okay?" Everything okay? My entire identity had been erased. If my own husband couldn't tell me from my sister, if he actually preferred the imposter version, then who was I? What was I? 8 years of devotion, sacrifice, building a life together, and I was interchangeable with a woman who'd spent 7 days play acting. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just betrayal, this was annihilation. But here's what neither Sarah nor Mark knew about the sweet, devoted housewife they'd so thoroughly dismissed. I wasn't just a homemaker. I'd never stopped being the ambitious, strategic woman I'd been before kids. I'd just hidden it well. 3 years ago, when Max started preschool and I finally had a few hours to myself each week, I'd done something Mark would have called impractical. I'd quietly restarted my marketing consulting business. Nothing flashy. Just a few select clients who needed brand strategy and digital campaign management. Work I could do from home during nap times and after bedtimes, while Mark was traveling or working late. It started small, a former colleague's startup that needed positioning help, then a referral to a boutique law firm, then another and another. I was good at what I did. Better than I'd been before kids, actually, because motherhood had taught me patience. Multitasking and reading people's unspoken needs. Within 18 months, I had 10 steady clients paying premium rates for my expertise. Mark never asked what I did with my free time. He assumed I was grocery shopping, at yoga, having coffee with other moms. The money I earned, averaging $4,000 to $6,000 a month, went into a private account I'd opened years ago. The account Mark knew nothing about because I'd never closed it when we got married, and he'd never thought to ask if I had separate finances. Over 3 years, that account had grown to $150,000. More than enough to leave him if I wanted to. More than enough to fund something far more satisfying than a simple divorce. But money wasn't my only hidden resource. Those clients I'd cultivated, they weren't just clients, they were connections. A network Mark had no idea I'd maintained and expanded. There was Rachel, the family law attorney who'd become a friend over strategy sessions. David, who ran a private investigation firm and specialized in marital cases. Jennifer, a tech executive at Amazon who had access to resources and information most people could only dream of. Marcus, a financial forensics expert who could trace money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. The Devoted Housewife Act had been so complete, so convincing, that everyone, including my own husband, had forgotten who I'd been. A woman who'd graduated summa cum laude with a marketing degree and a minor in psychology. A woman who'd landed a Fortune 500 account before she turned 25. A woman who understood how to read people, manipulate narratives, and execute long-term strategic campaigns. Sarah thought I was vanilla, predictable. She had no idea. Mark thought I was the boring version. He was about to learn exactly how exciting things could get. As I sat at my laptop that night after everyone was asleep, I made my decision. Quick revenge would be satisfying in the moment. A confrontation, a dramatic revelation, a messy divorce. But that was the warrior path, and I'd spent 8 years mastering patience. No, I'd take the sage approach, with calculated precision. They'd destroyed me through deception and betrayal. I'd return the favor through psychological warfare and natural consequences. I wouldn't break any laws. I wouldn't stoop to their level. But I would orchestrate their downfall so thoroughly, so completely, that when it was over, they'd beg for the quick version. The wound they'd inflicted was deep, deeper than they could imagine. But pain, I'd learned from years of childbirth and sacrifice, could be transformed into power. My wound would become my weapon. They thought they'd broken me. They'd actually just awakened something far more dangerous. A strategic mind with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Let the games begin. My first move was reconnaissance, and for that, I needed allies. People who'd seen what I'd seen, who could provide evidence and support when the time came. Mrs. Jenkins lived next door, 73 years old, sharp as a tack, and home all day tending her prize-winning rose garden. I found her outside the next morning, pruning shears in hand, and brought her chamomile tea from the lavender cups she loved. "Emily, dear," she said, accepting the cup with knowing eyes. "That wasn't you last week, was it?" My carefully constructed composure cracked. "You knew?" "Honey, I've lived next door for 5 years. I know how you move, how you talk to those children. That woman?" She shook her head. "Too sharp with little Max when he dropped his toy truck. Too flirtatious with Mark in the backyard. That wasn't my Emily." The validation, the simple acknowledgement that someone had seen the difference Mark couldn't, nearly broke me. Mrs. Jenkins patted my hand. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. She studied me with those wise, weathered eyes. "Remember, dear, revenge is a dish best served cold. Don't strike hot. Plan carefully. Make it count." Next, I reached out to Tom Chen, an old friend from college who'd become a private investigator. We'd stayed in touch over the years, Christmas cards, occasional coffee when he was in Seattle. I met him at a downtown cafe away from prying neighborhood eyes. "I need help," I said simply, and told him everything. Tom's expression darkened as I spoke. "How long do you want me to dig?" "As long as it takes to build an airtight case. Financial records, communications, timeline documentation, everything." "Give me 3 weeks," he said. "If there's dirt, I'll find it." But my most important priority was protecting Lily and Max. Whatever happened between Mark, Sarah, and me, my children would be shielded. I started documenting everything, my time with them, their routines, their happiness, building evidence of my role as primary caregiver, insurance for custody battles that might come. 3 weeks of intelligence gathering began. 3 weeks of maintaining the perfect facade while my allies worked in the shadows. Mrs. Jenkins watching, Tom investigating, me planning every move with surgical precision. The wound was deep, a chasm where trust used to live. But as I watched my children sleep that night, something crystallized inside me. This wound wouldn't destroy me, it would fuel me. The hardest part wasn't the planning. It wasn't gathering evidence or coordinating with allies. The hardest part was looking Mark in the eyes every single morning and pretending I didn't know. Smiling at Sarah when she texted about grabbing lunch soon. Acting like the devoted, oblivious wife and sister they believed I was. But I'd learned something crucial during 8 years of marriage and 32 years of being Sarah's twin. People see what they expect to see. Mark expected his predictable, boring wife. Sarah expected her pushover sister who always forgave. So that's exactly what I gave them. "Morning, babe," I'd say cheerfully, handing Mark his coffee exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars, splash of cream. I'd pack his lunch with little notes. "Have a great day. Love you." The same notes I'd been writing for years, except now they tasted like poison on my tongue. With Sarah, I maintained our usual rhythm, responded to her memes, liked her Instagram posts. When she suggested coffee again 2 weeks after our confrontation, I went, smiled, laughed at her stories about her latest disastrous Tinder date. Inside, I was a chess master studying the board, calculating moves 10 steps ahead. Outside, sweet, forgiving Emily who couldn't stay mad at family. "I'm glad we're okay," Sarah said, squeezing my hand across the table. "You know I'd never actually want to hurt you, right? It was just a stupid mistake." "Of course," I replied warmly, thinking, "Mistake? You planned this. You waited for the perfect moment when I was physically incapacitated and vulnerable. That's not a mistake. That's predation." But I just smiled. Water under the bridge. Family's too important. The relief on her face was almost comical. She actually believed I'd rolled over again like always. If she only knew that every word she spoke was being cataloged, every slip of information filed away for future use. The dramatic irony was delicious. When Mark complained about work stress at dinner, I listened with concerned, wifely attention while mentally noting his schedule patterns for Tom's investigation. When Sarah texted asking to borrow another $2,000 for rent, I saw the opening and wired it immediately, with meticulous documentation of every transaction building her pattern of financial parasitism. My goal was elegant in its simplicity: create natural consequences that looked like karma, not revenge. I wouldn't break any laws, wouldn't directly sabotage or harm. I'd simply arrange circumstances, remove protections, let their own greed, entitlement, and stupidity do the heavy lifting. Think of it like dominoes. I wasn't pushing them over. I was just carefully positioning each piece so that one tiny nudge would topple everything. Mrs. Jenkins became my eyes when I couldn't be watching. She'd text casual updates. That woman was here again today, 4 p.m. Sarah, visiting on afternoons when Mark worked from home. Building evidence, establishing patterns. Tom worked his magic in the background, digital breadcrumbs leading to discoveries I'd need later. Bank records, text message archives, email trails, all perfectly legal to obtain with the right expertise and justification. And me? I played my role flawlessly. The loving mother who volunteered at school, the supportive wife who brought coffee to Mark's home office during late-night work sessions, the loyal sister who never held grudges. At night, alone in the bathroom while Mark slept, I'd let the mask slip. Stare at my reflection, this face that looked exactly like Sarah's, but housed a completely different woman. The rage would surface, hot and sharp, and I'd press my palms against the cool marble counter until it subsided. Control. Patience. Strategic thinking over emotional reaction. "How are you so calm about everything?" Mrs. Jenkins asked during one of our morning tea sessions. I smiled, a real smile this time, because I know something they don't. "What's that, dear?" "That this isn't a sprint. It's a marathon, and I've been training for 8 years. 3 weeks became 4. 4 became 6. I let time work for me, let their guard drop, let them believe they'd gotten away with it. Meanwhile, pieces moved across the board. Phone calls were made, connections were activated, information was gathered and organized with the precision I'd once used on million-dollar marketing campaigns. They thought they were safe. They thought sweet Emily had forgiven and forgotten. If they only knew the reckoning I was building, brick by patient brick, they'd have run. But by then, it would be far too late. Tom's first report came exactly 3 weeks after I'd hired him, delivered over encrypted email to my private account. I opened it late one night, Mark snoring softly beside me, blue laptop light illuminating what I'd suspected but never proven. Sarah wasn't just my betrayer. She was everyone's. The documentation was damning. Over the past 5 years, my sister had run multiple small-scale scams. Nothing massive enough to trigger serious police investigation, but a clear pattern of fraud. She'd convinced her ex-boyfriend to invest $12,000 in a sure-thing cryptocurrency scheme, then disappeared with the money. Borrowed $8,000 from a former roommate for emergency medical bills that never existed. Taken advance payments for social media consulting services she never delivered. 4 different small businesses, totaling nearly $15,000. But here's what made my blood sing with vindictive satisfaction. She still owed money to 17 different creditors. Credit cards maxed and defaulted. Personal loans from friends gone unpaid. Even a payment plan with her dentist that she'd abandoned halfway through. Tom had compiled names, amounts, contact information, all perfectly legal public record and private information he'd obtained through interviews with people who'd been burned. People who thought they'd never see justice because the amounts were too small for lawsuits. Sarah, too, good at disappearing when consequences came knocking. "What do you want me to do with this?" Tom asked during our secure phone call. Nothing yet. Just one more thing. Can you create an anonymous tip service? A way to notify these people where Sarah is currently living and working without it tracing back to anyone? His laugh was dark. I love the way your mind works. 2 days later, the first dominoes fell. I was at Whole Foods with the kids when Sarah called, her voice shrill with panic. Em, I need your help. These people keep calling me, saying I owe them money. It's harassment. I shifted Lily's hand in mine, projecting calm concern while my heart raced with satisfaction. What people? Slow down. I don't know. Credit card companies, collection agencies, some guy named Trevor who says I scammed him 3 years ago. My phone won't stop ringing. In the background, I could hear it, the buzz of another incoming call. That's terrible, I murmured. Examining organic strawberries with calculated casualness. Did you owe these people money? That's not the point. How did they all find me at once? It's like someone... She stopped abruptly. Someone what? I prompted innocently. Nothing, never mind. Can you lend me some cash to get them off my back? Just $5,000 to settle the worst ones? $5,000. Like I was an ATM machine. Like the $60,000 I'd already given her over the years wasn't enough. Sarah, I'm sorry, but I really can't right now. Mark's been watching our budget closely with the kids' expenses. A lie, but a useful one. Maybe you could work out payment plans. The silence stretched, then cold and sharp. Right, of course. I should have known you'd leave me hanging when I actually need help. She hung up. I stood in the produce section, gripping my shopping cart and smiled. One down. Over the next week, the calls intensified. Tom had done his job perfectly, anonymously providing Sarah's current address, phone number, and employment information to every single person she owed. Not illegal, not harassment, just helpful information sharing between concerned parties. Sarah started showing up at my door, increasingly desperate. Em, please, they're threatening to sue. Some of them are talking about filing police reports for fraud. Have you tried just paying them back? I suggested gently, offering her tea she was too agitated to drink. With what money? You know I'm barely getting by. I almost laughed. Barely getting by? In the apartment I'd helped furnish, wearing clothes that cost more than my weekly grocery budget? But I just looked sympathetic. Maybe it's time to get a more stable job, something with reliable income? She shot me a look of pure venom. Not everyone can play housewife with a rich husband, Emily. Rich husband who was also betraying me with you, I thought. Out loud. I'm just trying to help. The real cherry on top came 2 weeks later. Sarah had managed to convince one creditor to hold off by promising a large payment, money she planned to get from Mark. I knew this because Tom was monitoring her texts with Mark's help, though Mark didn't know he was being monitored. But when Sarah tried to access the money Mark had supposedly set aside for her, she discovered he'd moved it, spent it on something else. Their texts exploded with accusations, which Tom forwarded to me in real time. Sarah, where's the money you promised? Mark, what money? I never promised anything. Sarah, the $3,000 for my debts. You said you'd help. Mark, I said I'd think about it. Can't right now. Work stuff. I sat at my kitchen counter, sipping wine, reading their fight with the satisfaction of watching a house I'd designed burn exactly according to plan. They were already turning on each other, and I'd barely lifted a finger. Everything okay? Mark asked, walking into the kitchen. I closed my phone quickly, smiling. Perfect. Just organizing Lily's birthday party. You want some wine? If he only knew that while he poured his Cabernet, his affair partner was melting down 3 miles away, trapped in consequences I'd orchestrated without breaking a single law. Natural consequences. That's all this was. I'd just help nature along. The photograph looked innocent enough. Sarah and me at age 7, gap-toothed grins, matching pigtails standing in our grandmother's garden. I dug it out from a box in the attic specifically for this purpose, along with a dozen others from our childhood. They'd been sitting in storage for years, forgotten until I needed them. I spread them across the coffee table one Saturday afternoon when Mark was home, sorting through them like I'd just spontaneously decided to organize family photos. Lily asked about when I was her age, I explained casually. Thought I'd make her an album. Mark glanced over from his laptop. That's sweet. Come help me figure out which ones to include. I patted the couch beside me. I can barely tell me from Sarah in half of these. He sat down, distracted but willing. Perfect. I handed him a picture from 4th grade. Which one am I? He studied it, frowning. Left? Right, I corrected gently. Look, Sarah's standing differently. She always put her weight on her left leg. I favored my right. I flipped to another. And see here? That's me with the scar on my knee from when I fell off my bike. Sarah doesn't have it. His frown deepened, but he said nothing. I continued, photo after photo, pointing out tiny differences. The way I smiled slightly crooked after I'd chipped a tooth in 6th grade, Sarah's habit of tilting her head more dramatically, my freckle pattern that was denser across the bridge of my nose, small things, subtle things, things only someone who really looked would notice. Weird how identical we are, but once you know what to look for... I trailed off, watching his face. Yeah, he said shortly. Weird. I let it sit for a moment, then... You know what's funny? Even Mom used to mix us up sometimes, but Dad never did. He said you could always tell by the eyes. I was more thoughtful, Sarah was more... I paused delicately. Impulsive. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Where are you going with this, Em? I looked up, all innocence. Going with what? I'm just making a photo album. But the seed was planted. I could see it in the way he looked at the pictures a moment longer than necessary, the way his jaw tightened when I mentioned the differences, the tiny flicker of something, doubt, guilt, that crossed his face before he stood up. I've got emails to answer, he muttered, retreating to his office. Over the next few days, I dropped careful, calculated questions. Nothing obvious, nothing accusatory, just observations. Did I seem different to you? Last week, when I got back from my hospital stay, I asked over breakfast. Different how? His tone was defensive immediately. I don't know. More present, you said. I've been thinking about that, trying to figure out what changed. I stirred my coffee thoughtfully. Did I do anything unusual? Say anything out of character? Why are you asking this? His knuckles were white around his mug. Just curious, trying to be more like that version you preferred. The words were light, but I let just enough hurt creep into my voice. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't mean, you're fine, Em. You're great. But different was better? I pressed, watching his squirm. I didn't say better, just different. Can we drop this? But I wouldn't. Not completely. Little comments here and there, timed perfectly. Sarah told me someone said we look different lately. Do you think so? Or, isn't it strange how twins can be so identical but so opposite inside? Or my favorite, delivered with perfect casual timing while he was distracted. If someone were to switch us, I wonder how long it would take people to notice. His head snapped up at that one. What kind of weird question is that? Just hypothetical. I smiled. You know, like those twin-switching movies. I always wondered if it was realistic. It's not. His voice was firm, too firm. I'd know you anywhere. Would you, though? I thought, but said nothing, just let the question hang in the air between us. Mrs. Jenkins reported that Mark had started watching Sarah more carefully during her afternoon visits, studying her in ways he hadn't before. Tom noted increased internet searches on Mark's computer, how to tell identical twins apart, twin personality differences, signs of deception. The paranoia was taking root, growing in the fertile soil of guilt. I didn't have to do much, just water it occasionally with careful questions and observations. Let his own conscience do the heavy lifting. Let the paranoia seed itself, I wrote in my private journal that night. Guilt is a garden that grows without any help. And Mark? Mark's garden was flourishing. Tom requested a meeting at a secure location, not our usual coffee shop, but a private office downtown he used for sensitive cases. The gravity in his voice when he called told me he'd found something big. I arranged childcare, told Mark I was having lunch with an old colleague, and drove to the address with my heart pounding. The folder he slid across the desk was thick. "You might want to sit down for this," he said quietly. I sat, opened it, and felt my world tilt sideways. Bank records. Our joint account, the one Mark and I had maintained for household expenses, showed transfers I'd never authorized, never even known about. $20,000 moved in increments over 6 months. Small enough amounts that they wouldn't trigger alerts. $1,500 here, $2,200 there, but together, devastating. Where did it go? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Tom flipped to the next section. Receipts, credit card statements from an account I didn't know Mark had. Jewelry purchases, a diamond tennis bracelet, $3,800. A Tiffany necklace, $2,400. Designer handbags, Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton, totaling another $6,000. Hotel stays at the W downtown. The Four Seasons in Portland, the Fairmont Olympic, all during his supposed business trips. Dates matched up perfectly with times Sarah had mentioned being out of town. "She's wearing them," I said numbly, remembering the bracelet that had caught the light during our last coffee date. I complimented her on that bracelet. She said she'd saved up for it. "There's more." Tom's expression was grim. He pulled out his laptop, opening a file. Text messages. I was able to recover deleted conversations from cloud backups. He turned the screen toward me. The messages went back 8 months. 8 months of planning, flirting, explicit content I couldn't bear to read in detail. But certain messages stopped my breath. Mark, 7 months ago. "Can't wait to have a whole week with you. Emily's surgery is scheduled for the 15th. Sarah, perfect timing. I'll take such good care of everything while she's recovering. Mark, 6 months ago. Feel guilty spending this much, but you deserve it. Sarah, please. Emily doesn't even notice what you spend. She's too busy playing housewife. Mark, 4 months ago. Sometimes I wish. Sarah, wish what? Mark, nothing, forget it. Sarah, say it. Mark, sometimes I wish I'd met you first instead of her. That message hit like a physical blow. I pressed my hand against my chest, willing my heart to keep beating. 8 months. They'd been planning this for 8 months, waiting for the perfect opportunity. My appendicitis hadn't been an opening. It had been the moment they'd been waiting for. Emily, Tom's voice was gentle. There's more you need to see. More? How could there possibly be more? He showed me. Financial analysis revealing that Mark had opened a separate savings account, one he'd been funneling money into, $10,000 carefully hidden. Escape fund, Tom explained. People do it when they're planning to leave a marriage but need resources in place first. The rage that swept through me was white-hot, incandescent. It burned away the last vestiges of the devoted wife who'd believed in her marriage. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a stupid mistake. This was calculated, premeditated, long-term betrayal. They'd been planning my replacement. "What do you want to do?" Tom asked. I closed the folder with shaking hands. The fury coursing through my veins was demanding immediate action. Confrontation, destruction, scorched earth. Every instinct screamed to go home, throw everything in his face, kick him out, call Sarah and eviscerate her with the truth. But beneath the rage, that colder, calculating part of my brain, the part that had built a successful business and managed complex campaigns, kicked in. Quick revenge was satisfying but temporary. Strategic revenge would destroy them completely. "How much of this is admissible in court?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "All of it. Joint account access means you had every right to those records. The text messages are from his phone account under your family plan, legal to access. The receipts and credit card statements are discoverable in divorce proceedings. And how much damage does this do to him financially?" Tom smiled grimly. "In Washington State? which has equitable distribution and strong protections for the wronged spouse. This proves marital misconduct, dissipation of marital assets, and fraud. You'd likely get majority custody of the kids, the house, significant spousal support, and recovery of that $20,000 plus damages. He'd be lucky to walk away with his retirement account intact. I nodded slowly, my strategic mind taking over from my emotional one. And Sarah? The gifts constitute proof of an ongoing affair. If you wanted to pursue alienation of affection or sue for emotional distress. No. I cut him off. Lawsuits are too clean, too quick. I looked at the evidence spread before me, months of betrayal documented in black and white. I want them to suffer, not in court, in life. I want natural consequences that feel like karma, not revenge. Tom leaned back, studying me. You've got a plan. I'm building one. I gathered the folder, securing it in my bag. This is ammunition, but I'm not firing yet. First, I'm going to hit them where they've hit me, money and reputation. Then, when they're vulnerable, then comes the reckoning. The beauty of having an identical twin is that we shared everything growing up, including social circles, acquaintances, and mutual understanding of each other's weaknesses. I knew exactly which buttons to push with Sarah, and after 8 years of marriage, I knew every single one of Mark's vulnerabilities, insecurities, and fears. Time to weaponize that knowledge. My opening move with Sarah came during lunch 3 days after Tom's devastating report. She'd suggested sushi, expensive sushi that I paid for, naturally, and spent the first 15 minutes complaining about her financial problems, the collection calls, her terrible job prospects. Men are so useless, she sighed dramatically, picking at her rainbow roll. They promise everything and deliver nothing. I made a sympathetic noise, then, casually, tell me about it. Mark's been so weird lately. Distant, irritable. Her eyes sharpened with interest. Oh? Yeah. I leaned in conspiratorially. Last week he went on this rant about how exhausting it is when women get too demanding, too needy, how he misses having space to breathe. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He said that? Complained for 20 minutes about clingy behavior and how suffocating it feels. I sipped my miso soup. I was like, am I being clingy? But he said no, just women in general. I think his coworker, Rachel, has been bothering him or something. The seed was planted. I could practically see it taking root behind her eyes. If Mark found clingy behavior suffocating, and Sarah had been texting him constantly, asking for money, expecting his time and attention. Weird, she muttered, pulling out her phone to check something. 2 days later, I made my move with Mark. He came home from work stressed, and I brought him a beer, playing the supportive wife. Rough day? Thompson's writing me about budget overruns. He rubbed his temples. Ugh, I'm sorry. I sat beside him. Hey, random question. Is Sarah doing okay? She seemed really off when we talked last week. His whole body tensed. Off how? Just, I don't know, unstable? She was talking about how men are terrible, can't be trusted. Everyone betrays her. Very doom and gloom. I paused. She mentioned something about being jealous of our life, our marriage, which was weird because we've always been so close. Jealous? His voice was tight. That's what I thought. But she went on this whole thing about how some people get everything handed to them while she has to struggle, how the favorite child gets the perfect life. I looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. Did I tell you she asked to borrow money again? $5,000 this time. I said no, and she got really hostile. Honestly, I'm a little worried about her mental state. I watched him process this, seeing the calculations behind his eyes. If Sarah was unstable, jealous, resentful, what did that make their affair? A genuine connection or her trying to take something from me? Over the next 2 weeks, I played them like violins. To Sarah, I mentioned Mark's stress about money, how he'd commented that he needed to cut unnecessary expenses, how he'd been increasingly private about his phone. To Mark, I shared Sarah's erratic behavior, her increasing demands for financial help, her jealous comments about our family. Mrs. Jenkins provided crucial intelligence. That woman showed up again yesterday, she reported over tea. But this time, there was shouting. I heard her saying something about "you promised," and him telling her to keep her voice down. "Thank you," I murmured, filing away the information. Tom, monitoring their communication with the access I now had to Mark's cloud account, sent me screenshots. The tone of their texts had shifted from flirtatious to tense. Sarah, "Why are you being distant?" Mark, "Not distant, just busy." Sarah, "You said you'd help with my rent." Mark, "I said I'd try. Can't right now." Sarah, "So I'm just supposed to figure it out myself?" Mark, "You're a grown woman, Sarah. Beautiful." The cracks were forming without me applying any direct pressure. I escalated carefully. To Sarah, I mentioned that Mark had seemed paranoid lately, asking weird questions about twin differences, how to tell us apart. Almost like he's suspicious of something, I laughed. So strange. Her next text to Mark, "Did you tell Emily anything?" His response, "About what? Why would you ask that?" The paranoia spiraled. Each suspected the other might crack, might confess, might be the weak link. Meanwhile, I played perfect ignorance, the wife too trusting to imagine betrayal, the sister too loyal to suspect treachery. The real masterwork came when I arranged a family dinner, me, Mark, Sarah, and our parents. Mark tried to get out of it, but I insisted. "We never see everyone together anymore. It'll be fun." It was not fun. For them, at least. I seated Sarah across from Mark, watched them try to act normal while avoiding eye contact. Every time Sarah reached for wine, Mark tensed. When Mark laughed at Dad's joke, Sarah's smile didn't reach her eyes. I kept the conversation flowing, kept everyone engaged, while internally reveling in their discomfort. At one point, Dad asked Sarah about her love life. "Any special someone?" She flushed. "No, dating is terrible." "She's been weird about men lately," I interjected sweetly. "Very suspicious of everyone. Trust issues, I think." Mark's water glass paused halfway to his lips. "Can you blame her?" Mom said. "So many men are dishonest." "Exactly," Sarah said forcefully, staring at Mark. "Men who make promises they don't keep." Mark's jaw clenched. "Some women expect too much." The table went quiet. I jumped in quickly. "Wow, that got awkward. Who wants dessert?" After dinner, as we cleaned up, Sarah cornered me in the kitchen. "Is Mark seeing someone?" "What? No, why would you think that?" "He's just been different." Pulling back. I looked concerned. Maybe he's stressed, or maybe... I hesitated artistically. "Maybe what?" "Nothing. Forget it." "Tell me." "It's probably nothing, but he did mention something about needing to be more careful about who he trusts." I squeezed her arm. "I'm sure it's not about you." But her face said otherwise. The alliance was crumbling, fractures spreading like cracks in ice. They'd betrayed me together. Now they'd destroy each other, and I hadn't fired a single direct shot. Mark's big promotion opportunity came exactly when I needed it. 2 months into my quiet campaign of psychological warfare, Vice President of Product Development, $100,000 salary increase, stock options, the corner office he'd been eyeing for years, everything he'd sacrificed our marriage for dangled right in front of him. "This is it, Em," he said, practically vibrating with excitement over dinner. "Thompson wants me to present the Q3 roadmap to the executive team. If I nail this, the VP position is mine." "That's amazing," I gushed, genuinely meaning it. Amazing for me, anyway. "When's the presentation?" 2 weeks. I need to build out the full strategy deck, market analysis, competitive positioning, resource allocation, timeline projections. He ran a hand through his hair, already stressed. "It's going to be brutal." "You know what?" I leaned forward, touching his arm. "I can help. I used to do this kind of thing all the time in marketing, remember? Strategy presentations were my specialty." His face lit up with relief. "Really? You do that?" "Of course. We're a team, right?" The lie tasted bitter, but my smile was pure sweetness. Email me what you have so far. I'll look it over tonight. Hook, line, and sinker. That night, after Mark fell asleep, I opened his draft presentation on my laptop. It was good. He'd always been brilliant with product strategy, clear vision, solid data, compelling narrative. The kind of presentation that would have landed him the job easily. I spent 3 hours making it worse. Not obviously worse. That would be suspicious. No, I made it subtly, insidiously. Professionally worse in ways that would only become apparent when he was standing in front of the executive team. First, the data. I introduced small errors in the market analysis. Nothing dramatic, just tweaking percentages, slightly misrepresenting competitor positions, using outdated statistics instead of current ones. The kind of mistakes that would make him look sloppy, underprepared. Then, the tone. Mark's original draft was confident, but not arrogant. I shifted it toward overconfidence, making claims that couldn't be fully supported, promising timelines that weren't realistic. I inserted buzzwords and corporate jargon that sounded impressive, but said nothing concrete, made it feel amateur despite the professional veneer. The resource allocation section, I adjusted the numbers so they didn't quite add up. Not by huge amounts, just enough that anyone double-checking would notice the math was off. Most crucially, I removed the contingency plans. Every good strategy presentation acknowledges potential risks and has backup plans. I stripped those out, making Mark look naive and unprepared for challenges. Finally, I inserted a subtle but fatal error. I referenced a competitor product launch that hadn't actually happened yet. It was planned for Q4, but I had Mark presenting it as if it had already occurred. The kind of mistake that would make the executive team question whether he was paying attention to the market at all. Finished, I announced cheerfully the next morning, handing back his laptop. Made some tweaks to strengthen the narrative flow and updated a few data points. I think it's really solid now. He pulled me into a grateful hug. You're amazing. Thank you. That's what partners do, I murmured against his chest, thinking about his secret bank account and the $20,000 in gifts to my sister. The 2 weeks before the presentation, I played the supportive wife beautifully, helped him practice, giving feedback that reinforced my changes rather than corrected them. That section on competitor analysis is really strong, I'd say, knowing it was fatally flawed. The executives are going to love your confidence. The morning of the presentation, I made his favorite breakfast, kissed him goodbye, wished him luck. You're going to crush it. I spent the day anxiously checking my phone, not with worry, but anticipation. Finally, at 4:37 p.m., Mark's text came through. That was a disaster. Oh no, I called him immediately, phone to ear, voice dripping with concern. What happened? His voice was hollow. Thompson called me out on the data errors. The market analysis was wrong. Outdated stats, incorrect competitor positioning. Then Johnson from finance noticed the resource allocation numbers didn't add up. And worst of all, he laughed bitterly. I referenced a product launch that hasn't happened yet, made me look completely out of touch. But how? I thought we checked everything. I don't know. He sounded defeated. Maybe I was too stressed, too scattered. They kept asking questions I couldn't answer, challenged every assumption. By the end, Thompson said they'd revisit the VP decision next quarter after I've had time to regroup. I'm so sorry, babe. Maybe it was just nerves? Yeah, maybe. But he didn't sound convinced. He sounded broken. That evening, he came home early, poured a whiskey, and sat in the dark living room. I brought him dinner he didn't eat, rubbed his shoulders, murmured comforting words. Inside, satisfaction sang through my veins like electricity. His career, the thing he'd prioritized over our marriage, over me, over everything, had just taken a massive hit. The promotion he'd betrayed our vows for was gone. His reputation at work was damaged. His confidence was shattered, and he had no idea I'd done it. These things happen, I soothed, kissing his temple. You'll bounce back. But Tom had already confirmed they'd tapped someone else for the VP role. Mark's career trajectory had just been permanently altered, One down, many more victories to go. Sarah's text came on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days after Mark's presentation disaster. Got a job. Finally something good. Starting Monday at Lux & Thread Boutique downtown. Commission-based, but could be great money. I responded with enthusiasm and sister emojis while immediately forwarding the information to Tom. Find everything you can about her employment history, specifically theft or dishonesty issues. Tom delivered within 48 hours. Your sister has a problem, he said over our secure call. 3 years ago, she worked at a high-end boutique in Portland, got fired for stealing merchandise, 2 dresses and a handbag, total value around $1,500. They didn't press charges because she returned the items and quit before they could officially terminate her. Police report? No, but I tracked down the manager. She's willing to provide documentation and a statement. Also found similar incidents at 2 other retail positions, inventory discrepancies that coincided with Sarah's employment, though nothing proven. Perfect. Can you package this for an anonymous report? Already done. Just say the word. I waited until Sarah's 3rd day at Lux & Thread, long enough for her to feel secure, to start mentally counting her commission potential. Then I gave Tom the green light. The anonymous email went to the boutique owner with documentation attached, prior theft incidents, the Portland manager's statement, photos of Sarah wearing merchandise that had mysteriously gone missing from previous employers, all factual, all verifiable. Nothing fabricated, just truth presented at the most damaging moment. Sarah's frantic call came during Lily's soccer practice. "Em, they fired me. Can you believe it? Some anonymous tip that I'm a thief." What? That's insane. I juggled my phone while watching Lily miss a goal. Why would anyone say that? I don't know. They said there was documentation of past incidents. I told them it was a misunderstanding years ago, but they wouldn't listen. Just escorted me out like a criminal. Her voice cracked. This is targeted, Em. Someone's trying to destroy me. Who would do that? I asked, genuinely curious to hear her theories. I don't know. Maybe Mark? Is he mad at me about something? Interesting. The paranoia I'd cultivated was bearing fruit. Why would Mark try to get you fired? Never mind, forget it. Can you come over? I can't be alone right now. I glanced at Lily, then Max playing in the grass. I've got the kids, but how about I bring dinner tonight? Family solidarity? She agreed. And I orchestrated what I privately called the sympathy dinner from hell. I invited Sarah over, told Mark his sister-in-law needed support after losing her job. The stage was set. Sarah arrived looking haggard, makeup smudged, wearing, I noted with dark satisfaction, one of my old sweaters. Mark came home from work still licking his wounds from his presentation failure. Neither wanted to be there. Both had to pretend everything was fine in front of me and the kids. Over lasagna I'd deliberately made too salty. Sarah unloaded. Everything's falling apart. First the creditors, now this job. It's like the universe is against me. Maybe you're just having a rough patch, Mark offered weakly, not making eye contact. A rough patch? My life is imploding. She looked at him meaningfully. And the people I thought would help me are nowhere to be found. Mark shifted uncomfortably. I'm sure things will turn around. Will they, though? Sarah's voice had an edge. Promises don't mean much these days. Lily looked up from her pasta. Aunt Sarah, why are you mad? I'm not mad, sweetie. Sarah forced a smile. Just tired. You look like Mommy when she's sad, Lily observed with childhood honesty. The table went silent. I jumped in quickly. Finish your dinner, Lil, then you can have dessert. But the damage was done. The tension was palpable, crackling between Mark and Sarah like static electricity. 2 people who'd conspired together, now avoiding each other's eyes across my dinner table. 2 people whose plans were crumbling while I served them seconds and asked if anyone wanted more wine. This too shall pass, I said with warm reassurance, patting Sarah's hand. You'll find another job. Things always work out. Sarah's laugh was bitter. Do they? After she left, early claiming a headache, Mark retreated to his office. I cleaned up the kitchen, scraping barely touched food into the trash, and smiled at my reflection in the window above the sink. They were both falling apart. Jobs lost. Money problems mounting. Trust between them fracturing. And the beautiful part? They blamed each other, blamed the universe, blamed bad luck. Neither suspected the devoted wife and sister orchestrating every coincidence. Victims of their own karma, I thought, loading the dishwasher. I was just helping karma along. The first note appeared on Mark's car windshield on a foggy Thursday morning. Just a simple piece of white paper tucked under the wiper blade, 7 words in cut-out magazine letters, like something from a thriller movie. I know about you and Sarah. Tom had created it, of course. Wearing gloves, using letters from magazines purchased with cash at a thrift store 3 towns over. Untraceable, anonymous, terrifying in its simplicity. I was conveniently inside making breakfast when Mark discovered it. I heard his car door slam, then silence, then footsteps quick and heavy as he rushed back into the house. "Em, did you put something on my car?" I looked up from scrambling eggs, perfectly confused. "What? No. Why?" He had the note crumpled in his fist, but he didn't show it to me. "Nothing, never mind, probably junk mail." But his face was pale, his hand trembling slightly as he shoved the paper into his pocket. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Fine, just work stress. I need to get going." He kissed me hastily, barely touching my cheek, and left. Through the window, I watched him sit in his car for a full 5 minutes, staring at his phone, before finally pulling out of the driveway. Tom confirmed Mark immediately called Sarah. Audio's not great, but I caught, "Did you tell anyone?" And "We need to be more careful." Perfect. The second note arrived 3 days later, this time in Sarah's mailbox. She called me immediately, voice high with panic. "Em, someone knows. Someone fucking knows." "Knows what?" I asked innocently, folding laundry in my bedroom. "About—" She stopped herself. "Nothing. Never mind. I'm just paranoid." "Are you in some kind of trouble?" "No, maybe. I don't know." She was spiraling. "Has anyone been asking you questions about me, about Mark?" "Questions? Like what?" I let confusion color my voice. "Sarah, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Nothing. Sorry, I'm just stressed. Forget I called." But she couldn't forget. Neither could Mark. Tom's surveillance showed their texts exploding with paranoia. Mark: "Did you get one too?" Sarah: "Yes, this morning." Who could know? Mark: "Emily?" Sarah: "No way. She's clueless." Mark: "Then who? Your ex? Someone from work?" Sarah: "I don't know, but we need to stop." Mark: "Stop what?" Sarah: "This. Us. Whatever this is, it's too risky." Mark: "You're overreacting." Sarah: "Am I?" "Someone knows, Mark." The third note went to Mark's office, delivered via internal mail so it looked like it came from inside his company. This one had more detail. 8 months, $20,000. Does Emily know? Tom had outdone himself with that one. The internal mail delivery made Mark paranoid about his coworkers. Was someone at Tech Vance watching him? Did they know about the money? The affair? Was his career about to implode further? He came home that night looking haunted, jumped at every sound, checked his phone obsessively. I played concerned wife beautifully. "Babe, what's wrong? You've been so tense lately." "Nothing, just work stuff." "Is this about the VP position? Because you can't let that define you." "It's not that." He poured whiskey with shaking hands. "Do you ever feel like someone's watching you? Like someone knows things they shouldn't?" I frowned, genuinely appearing worried. "That's a weird thing to say. Are you okay? Should we talk to someone?" No, I'm fine, just paranoid, I guess." The fourth note was the cruelest, and I went to Sarah. "He'll never leave her for you." She didn't call me about that one. But Tom reported she'd shown up at Mark's office unannounced, demanding to talk. Their argument in the parking lot was heated enough that a coworker had asked Mark if everything was okay. Who was that woman? The coworker had asked, according to Tom's source, inside Tech Vance. "My sister-in-law," Mark had replied tightly. family drama. But rumors started. Mark Thompson's brother-in-law having public arguments with an emotional woman in the parking lot at a company that prided itself on professionalism. It wasn't a good look. The fifth note was my masterpiece. It went to both of them on the same day, same wording. I have proof. Tell the truth or I will. The deadline was implied but not stated, which made it more terrifying. Tell the truth to whom? When? Or what? The ambiguity was psychological torture. Their texts that night were frantic. Sarah, we have to tell her. Mark, are you insane? That'll destroy everything. Sarah, everything's already destroyed. At least if we confess, we control the narrative. Mark, no. We wait. See what happens. Sarah, what if they go to Emily first? Mark, then we deny everything. Sarah, you're a coward. Mark, and you're hysterical. Get it together. The alliance wasn't just cracking anymore, it was shattering. They blamed each other for the exposure, suspected each other of being the weak link. Their united front against me had become a circular firing squad. I watched it all unfold from my quiet position in the shadows, the innocent wife completely unaware of the drama swirling around her. Mrs. Jenkins reported increased arguments during Sarah's visits. Tom noted Mark's productivity at work had plummeted. Constant distraction, checking his car for notes, looking over his shoulder. They were paranoid, isolated, turning on each other. And I hadn't even revealed the real evidence yet. The psychological warfare was working better than I'd imagined. Why confront them directly when I could let them destroy themselves through fear and guilt? The truth would come, but not yet, not until they'd suffered enough. The opportunity came through Jennifer, my old colleague who'd risen to senior VP at Amazon. We met for coffee, legitimately this time, and I pitched my idea. I need you to play venture capitalist, I explained. Fake investment opportunity. Tech startup that sounds incredibly promising but will crash spectacularly. Can you do that? Jennifer studied me over her oat milk latte. This is for the revenge plan? This is for justice. She grinned. Hell yes. I've always wanted to run a con. What's the play? We spent 2 hours crafting the perfect bait. Nexus Tech Solutions, a fictional AI startup supposedly developing revolutionary machine learning algorithms for predictive market analysis. The kind of thing that sounded impressive to people who didn't quite understand tech but wanted to sound sophisticated. The kind of thing Mark, with his wounded ego and need to prove himself, would find irresistible. The kind of thing Sarah, always chasing easy money, would jump on immediately. Jennifer created a professional website, fake LinkedIn profiles for founders, even mock press releases from tech blogs she had connections with. The investment terms were designed to trigger greed. Minimum investment $10,000. Promised 400% returns within 6 months. Exclusive opportunity for select investors only. Then came the hard part, getting it in front of them without obvious connection to me. I had Jennifer accidentally mention it during a LinkedIn message to Mark. Hey, saw your profile. Random question. Are you still doing product development at TechVance? I'm advising this startup that's looking for strategic investors with your background. No pressure, just thought of you. Mark, still raw from his failed promotion and looking to prove his business acumen, bit immediately. He responded asking for details. Jennifer sent him the pitch deck. Professionally designed, full of impressive-sounding buzzwords and fabricated data. Meanwhile, I planted seeds with Sarah during our weekly coffee date. Mark mentioned something about an investment opportunity. Some AI startup? He seemed really excited about it. Her eyes lit up with predatory interest. Oh? What kind of investment? I don't know the details. Tech stuff. You know how he gets about that. I paused. He said something about big returns if you get in early. That was all Sarah needed. She texted Mark within the hour. Tom forwarded me their conversation. Sarah, heard about your investment thing. Send me details? Mark, how'd you hear about that? Sarah, Emily mentioned it. Sounds interesting. Mark, it's exclusive, limited spots. Sarah, so get me a spot. I've got money I need to invest. Mark, you're broke. Where would you get $10K? Sarah, I've got some saved, and I could borrow from Emily if needed. There it was, the beautiful, predictable greed I'd been counting on. Mark, despite his misgivings about Sarah after weeks of tension, couldn't resist sharing the opportunity. His ego needed to prove he was still making smart moves, still ahead of the game. And if Sarah invested too, that was her problem. Jennifer played her role perfectly. Conference calls with both of them separately selling the dream. The algorithms we've developed are revolutionary. Early investors are positioning themselves for massive returns. Mark, with your product background, you understand the market potential. Sarah, your timing couldn't be better. We're closing this funding round in 72 hours. The manufactured urgency sealed it. Mark transferred $10,000 from our savings account. Money I carefully didn't mention I'd noticed missing. Sarah, according to Tom's intel, borrowed $6,000 from a friend and scraped together another $4,000 from her dwindling resources. They both wired money to Jennifer's legitimate business account, which would be returned to me later, completing the legal circle. Investments confirmed, Jennifer texted me. Phase 2? Give it 2 weeks. Let them get comfortable. For 14 days, Mark was insufferable with renewed confidence. I made a smart play, Em. Could be a game changer for us. He started checking the fake Nexus Tech website daily, watching the fabricated stock price climb. Sarah texted updates. Already up 15%. This is going to be huge. They were counting their chickens, building dreams on a foundation of lies I'd carefully constructed. Then Jennifer initiated the crash. The Nexus Tech website went dark without warning. Emails bounced back. The LinkedIn profiles disappeared. The tech blog press releases were removed. The company evaporated like it had never existed. Mark's call to Jennifer went straight to voicemail. His increasingly frantic messages went unanswered. Sarah's texts to Mark started within the hour. Sarah, the website is gone. What's happening? Mark, I don't know. Trying to reach Jennifer. Sarah, you said this was legitimate. Mark, it was. She worked at Amazon. Sarah, well, now she's disappeared with our money. Mark, our money. You made your own decision. Sarah, you brought me the opportunity. Mark, and you jumped in because you're greedy. The argument escalated. Tom sent me screenshots in real time, and I sat at my kitchen counter drinking wine, savoring every message. Sarah, I borrowed that money. People are going to come after me. Mark, that's your problem. I lost money too. Sarah, this is your fault. Everything is your fault. Mark, my fault? You're the one who ruins everything you touch. Sarah, fuck you, Mark. Mark, right back at you. When Mark came home that evening, he looked like he'd aged 5 years. Em, I need to talk to you about something. What's wrong? I asked, all concerned. I made an investment. It didn't work out. We're down $10,000. I let my face show shock, hurt, anger, the perfect cocktail of betrayed wife. $10,000? Mark, without discussing it with me? I thought, it seems so solid. We have kids, a mortgage. You don't just gamble with our savings. He had no defense, no leg to stand on. Just stood there absorbing my justified fury while internally dealing with the knowledge that he'd also been betrayed by Sarah, who was blaming him for her losses. They'd lost money, lost trust in each other, lost their fragile alliance. And I'd lost nothing except funds I'd planned to spend, destroying them anyway. With Mark and Sarah's relationship fractured and their finances damaged, it was time to dismantle their social foundations. Reputation is everything, and I was about to become their worst publicist. I started with our mutual friends, the couples we'd done dinners with, game nights, weekend barbecues. I didn't spread lies. I didn't need to. I just carefully, tearfully confided concerns. Melissa, my closest mom friend from the kids' school, got the first performance over lunch. Can I tell you something in confidence? I'm worried about Mark. Oh no, what's wrong? Melissa leaned in, eager for gossip disguised as concern. He's been so stressed lately, distant, and... I paused, letting tears well up. I found some concerning texts on his phone. Nothing I can prove, but I think something might be going on with my sister. Sarah? Your twin Sarah? I don't want to believe it. They've been spending time together and there's money missing from our account. I trailed off meaningfully. I feel crazy even saying it out loud. Oh, honey. Melissa gripped my hand. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it usually is. The seed planted, I moved to the next friend. Then the next. Each conversation carefully calibrated, never quite accusing, always questioning, perpetually the confused wife trying to make sense of strange behavior. Mark's been so secretive. Money's going missing. Sarah asks about him constantly. They have these inside jokes I don't understand. Within 2 weeks, whispers circulated through our social circle. I could see it in how people looked at Mark at the neighborhood barbecue. Sympathetic glances at me, cool politeness toward him, conversations that stopped when he approached, invitations that mysteriously dried up. At his office, I deployed a more strategic strike. Jennifer had connections throughout Seattle's tech scene. She casually mentioned to someone who knew someone at Tech Vance that Mark Thompson seemed to be going through personal issues. Affair with his sister-in-law, from what I heard. Messy situation, poor wife. The tech community, for all its supposed progressiveness, loves gossip. Within days, Mark noticed the shift. Thompson's been weird with me, he mentioned over dinner. Cold, professional but distant. Maybe he's stressed about the VP position, I suggested innocently. Maybe. But he looked uncertain, paranoid. For Sarah, the social demolition was even easier. She'd burned so many bridges over the years that her circle was small and fragile. I reached out to a few of her old friends, women she'd borrowed money from, roommates she'd screwed over, colleagues from past jobs. I'm worried about Sarah, I'd say. She seems unstable. Has she reached out to you? The responses were telling. God, no, and I hope she doesn't. She still owes me $3,000. That girl is toxic. I documented everything. Screenshots and recordings, legal in Washington state with one-party consent, of people confirming Sarah's pattern of destructive behavior. Then I accidentally let slip to one of Sarah's remaining friends that Sarah had been sleeping with someone's husband. Didn't say whose. Let speculation do the work. Within 3 weeks, Sarah's Instagram comments turned hostile. Old friends posting, "Karma's a bitch. Some people never change. Stay away from married men, homewrecker." She called me crying. People are attacking me online, saying terrible things. Do you know what's happening? Oh my God, Sarah, I had no idea. Want me to report the comments? I asked, while internally celebrating every vicious message. Meanwhile, Mrs. Jenkins played her role as the witness beautifully. She mentioned to several neighbors that she'd seen suspicious activity at my house, a woman who looked like me but wasn't quite right, coming and going at odd hours when Mark was home alone. Poor Emily, she'd cluck. I hope she knows what's going on. The neighborhood gossip mill churned. At the next HOA meeting, people looked at Mark and me with that particular expression that says they know something we supposedly don't. Mark felt it too. Why is everyone acting weird? He asked after we left. I don't know, maybe we're just paranoid, I said, knowing exactly why. Tom's contribution was perhaps the most elegant. Forged emails that appeared to be from Sarah, sent to Mark's work contacts, asking inappropriate questions about his schedule, his meetings, when he'd be free. Professional boundaries crossed, making it look like she was obsessively pursuing him. Mark's HR department reached out. We need to discuss some concerning communications that have come to our attention. By month 3, both Mark and Sarah were socially isolated, friends distant, families questioning, reputations tarnished. They'd become pariahs in their own communities. And the beautiful irony? They blamed each other for the exposure, never suspecting the sweet, loyal Emily had orchestrated every whisper, every rumor, every social death by 1,000 cuts. Rachel, my lawyer friend, had been waiting patiently for 3 months. You've built an impressive case, she said during our consultation at her downtown office. But if you want maximum impact, we need to make strategic legal moves before the final confrontation. What do you recommend? She spread documents across her conference table. First, we secure your assets. Then we position for custody. Then we create legal pressure that looks routine but is actually devastating. The asset freeze came first. Rachel filed a motion for temporary protection of marital assets, citing suspected financial misconduct and dissipation of marital funds. The evidence was compelling. Mark's unauthorized transfers, the hidden savings account, the $20,000 in gifts. We weren't accusing him of anything in divorce court yet. This was just a protective measure that any reasonable spouse would take after discovering concerning financial activity. The judge approved it within 48 hours. Mark discovered the freeze when his credit card was declined at a business lunch, then his personal account, then his secret savings account. Everything locked pending court review. He called me from his office, voice tight with panic. Did you do something with our bank accounts? What? No, what's wrong? Everything's frozen. I can't access any of our money. That's weird. Let me check. I logged into my account, the one I'd carefully structured so I maintained access. Mine works fine. Maybe call the bank? The bank directed him to Rachel's legal filing. His call to me 5 minutes later was explosive. You filed a legal motion without telling me? I found some concerning transactions, Mark. Money missing. I'm protecting our family's assets. Any reasonable person would do the same. My voice was calm, reasonable. The voice of a betrayed spouse taking appropriate action. This is insane. You can't just freeze me out of my own money. Our money, and apparently I can. The court agreed. I paused. Mark, if you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. The court will review everything and release the funds. But the review process? Rachel estimated 3 to 4 months. In the meantime, Mark had access to only a basic allowance for necessities, carefully calculated to be uncomfortable but not illegal. Sarah, who'd been counting on Mark's financial support, was cut off completely. Her texts to him became increasingly desperate. Sarah, I need money. Rent is due. Mark, I'm frozen out. Court order. Sarah, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Mark, not my problem right now. The second legal maneuver was even more elegant. I filed for updated custody documentation, not divorce, just updated agreements about parenting time, decision-making, school choices. Completely normal for parents to formalize these things, according to Rachel. Except the filing required Mark to submit to a background check, financial disclosure, and parenting evaluation. Standard procedure, Rachel explained to the family court judge. Mrs. Thompson just wants to ensure proper documentation is in place for the children's welfare. Mark had to comply, had to disclose his financial misconduct, had to sit through a parenting evaluation where they asked about his stress levels, work hours, emotional availability. The evaluator's preliminary report noted, father appears distracted, emotionally unavailable, experiencing significant work stress. Mother appears stable, engaged, primary caregiver. I built my case for primary custody without ever mentioning divorce. Finally, Rachel sent a formal request to Tech Vance's HR disclosure of any workplace relationships or conflicts of interest, standard procedure for a spouse involved in financial litigation. The request itself was legal and routine, but it forced Mark's company to investigate, to ask questions, to put him under scrutiny. The legal pressure mounted from all sides. Frozen assets, custody evaluation, work investigation, nothing explosive, nothing obviously vindictive, just the slow, grinding machinery of legal process that looked protective and reasonable from the outside, but was systematically dismantling his life. How long can you maintain this? Rachel asked. As long as necessary. I smiled. They thought they could betray me without consequences. Now they're learning what consequences actually look like. And the beautiful part? Everything was legal, justified, appropriate. The system was working exactly as designed, protecting the betrayed spouse and innocent children. I wasn't breaking any laws. I was using them. 3 months into my campaign, the pressure had built to a breaking point. Mark was unraveling. Frozen finances, damaged career. Social isolation, legal scrutiny. Sarah was desperate, jobless, broke, friendless, being hounded by creditors. And me? I was the picture of stability, concern, and innocence. It was time to light the final fuse before the explosion. I came home from grocery shopping on a Wednesday afternoon and discovered Mark's phone on the kitchen counter. He'd left it there while showering, careless. But he'd been so distracted lately. The screen was unlocked, messages visible. How convenient. I called out, making sure he heard me from upstairs. "Mark, your phone's going crazy down here." By the time he emerged, towel around his waist, I was holding it with trembling hands, tears streaming down my face. The texts with Sarah were pulled up. Tom had helped me access and save the most damning ones weeks ago. But I'd been waiting for the perfect moment to find them. I can explain. 8 months. My voice broke beautifully, Oscar-worthy in its devastation. You've been planning this for 8 months. The week I was in the hospital, I couldn't finish the sentence, letting sobs choke off the words. It's not what you think. Not what I think. I thrust the phone at him. Sometimes I wish I'd met you first instead of her. That's from Mark to my sister. What am I supposed to think? He reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. Emily, please. How could you? The words were raw, genuine pain mixing with performed anguish. Because under the strategy and planning, the betrayal still hurt. My own sister, in our bed, with our children sleeping down the hall. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. I grabbed my keys. I can't even look at you right now. Where are you going? I don't know, anywhere but here. I stormed out, leaving him standing in the kitchen, water dripping from his hair, holding his phone like it was evidence at a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. I drove to Mrs. Jenkins' house. She was expecting me. We'd rehearsed this. She welcomed me in, made tea, played the comforting neighbor while I fell apart. From her living room window, we watched Mark frantically calling my phone, watched him get dressed, get in his car, drive around the neighborhood looking for me. "How long are you going to let him suffer?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, a small smile playing at her lips. "A few more hours. Let the panic really set in." Meanwhile, Sarah was having her own crisis. Mark had immediately called her after I left. "Mark? She knows. She found the texts." Sarah: "What? What did you tell her?" Mark: "Nothing. She just left. She's not answering." Sarah: "This is a disaster. What are we going to do?" Mark: "We? There is no we anymore. This is your fault." Sarah: "My fault? You're the one who left your phone unlocked." Mark: "You're the one who couldn't keep your hands off your sister's husband." Sarah: "Fuck you, Mark. You came to me. You said you wished you'd met me first." Mark: "I was having a moment. I never meant for this to actually happen." The blame game I'd orchestrated so carefully exploded into full warfare. They turned on each other completely, each text more vicious than the last. Tom forwarded them all to me in real time. I let 4 hours pass. Long enough for Mark to call my mom, who knew nothing, so she panicked. Long enough for him to try Sarah's place, where she refused to open the door. Long enough for him to consider calling the police, but realized that would make everything worse. When I finally came home at 10 p.m., he was sitting in the dark living room, head in his hands. "I'm sleeping in the guest room. Don't talk to me. Don't come near me. Tomorrow we're discussing what happens next, but tonight, I can't even breathe the same air as you." I walked upstairs, closed the guest room door, and finally let myself smile. The breaking point had been reached. They suspected each other. They hated each other. They were isolated, desperate, and turning on each other like rats in a sinking ship. And I was the devastated wife, the innocent victim, the betrayed sister. Everything was positioned exactly where I needed it. Now came the reckoning. 6 months. 6 months since I'd walked in on my husband with my sister. 6 months of careful planning, strategic strikes, and patient orchestration. 6 months of watching them unravel while I maintained perfect composure. Now, on a crisp October evening with leaves falling like confetti outside my window, it was time to end this. I'd arranged for the kids to have a sleepover at their friend's house. Lily was thrilled. Max followed his sister anywhere. The house was empty, clean, ready. I'd invited both Mark and Sarah for 7 p.m. "We need to talk things out," I'd told each of them separately. "All three of us. Clear the air. Move forward." Mark had agreed, reluctantly, desperate for any path toward resolution. Sarah had been suspicious but curious, probably hoping I'd finally forgiven them. Neither knew the other was coming until they arrived. Mark showed up first at 6:55, exactly on time like always. He looked terrible. Weight loss, dark circles, the haunted expression of a man living with guilt. Thank you for agreeing to talk. I've been wanting to..." The doorbell cut him off. His face went pale. "Who's that?" "Come in and see." Sarah stood on the porch, dressed carefully. My burgundy sweater again, I noted with cold amusement. Her eyes widened when she saw Mark through the doorway. "What is this?" "A conversation," I said calmly. "Come in, both of you." They entered like animals approaching a trap, eyes darting, bodies tense. I gestured to the living room. "Sit." They chose opposite ends of the couch, as far from each other as possible. Interesting. I remained standing, positioned between them and the door, controlling the space. "I know everything," I said simply. No preamble, no small talk, just the truth, clean and sharp as a blade. Mark's face drained of color. "I can explain." "Can you?" I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the first screenshot. "Explain this text from 8 months ago. Can't wait to have a whole week with you. Emily's surgery is scheduled for the 15th. I looked at Sarah. "Perfect timing, you said." Sarah's rehearsed innocence crumbled. "That's taken out of context." "Context?" I laughed, cold and bitter. "Let me give you context." I pulled out the folder Tom had prepared, thick, organized, devastating. 8 months of texts, $20,000 stolen from our joint account, hotel receipts, jewelry purchases. The week you spent pretending to be me while I recovered from emergency surgery. "You can't prove," Mark started. "I can prove everything." I opened the folder, spreading documents across the coffee table like playing cards. Bank statements, credit card bills, text message transcripts. "Tom, you can come out now." The kitchen door opened and Tom stepped into the living room. Sarah gasped. Mark's jaw went slack. "Tom Chen, private investigator." He introduced himself pleasantly. "I've been documenting your affair for 6 months. Every text, every call, every financial transaction." He set down his own folder, even thicker than mine. Timeline analysis, witness statements, photographic evidence, and video surveillance from the week of the switch. "Video?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Mrs. Jenkins has a security camera. Catches her front walkway and part of your driveway." Tom smiled. "Fascinating footage. Emily leaves for the hospital on Monday morning. Sarah arrives Monday afternoon with a suitcase, stays the entire week, wears Emily's clothes, waves to the neighbors, plays with the kids. And yes, we have video of you and Mark being intimate in the backyard." He paused. "At night, when you thought no one could see." The color drained from both their faces. "But wait," I continued, voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. "There's more. Sarah, want to tell Mark about the 17 creditors I anonymously informed of your whereabouts? Or should we discuss the theft charges from your Portland job that got you fired from Lux and Thread?" Sarah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And Mark," I turned to him. "Should we talk about how your VP presentation failed because I subtly sabotaged it? Or the fake investment opportunity that cost you $10,000? Maybe we should discuss the anonymous notes that made you both paranoid for months." His eyes widened with dawning horror. "That was you?" "All of it." I smiled, and it wasn't kind. The creditors harassing Sarah, the notes, the investment scam, the social whispers, the legal motions freezing your accounts, the HR investigation at your work, every single unfortunate coincidence over the past 6 months. That was me. "You're insane?" Sarah breathed. "Am I?" You stole my identity. You slept in my bed. You played mother to my children. You took my life for a week and thought you gotten away with it." I leaned forward. "I just took 6 months to systematically dismantle yours in return. That's not insane. That's justice." Tom pulled out another document. "For the record, I've also documented your communications with each other. The fighting, the blame, the way you turned on each other the moment pressure was applied." He looked at them with professional detachment. "You blamed each other for the exposure, accused each other of being weak, fought over money, over who was more responsible, over who betrayed whom first. We have audio recordings," I added. "Video of your parking lot argument at Tech Vance, Mark. Screenshots of every vicious text where you called Sarah hysterical, unstable, greedy, and Sarah's messages calling Mark a coward, a user, saying she wished she'd never gotten involved." The truth crashed over them like a tsunami. This wasn't a betrayal between two people. It was a complete exposure of 6 months of carefully documented evidence. Every lie, every manipulation, every moment of their affair was cataloged, recorded, and ready for whatever legal proceedings came next. "Why?" Sarah finally asked, voice breaking. "Why do all this instead of just confronting us?" I looked at her, this woman who shared my face but not my soul. Because a quick confrontation would have been satisfying for 5 minutes. This taught you both what betrayal actually costs, not just emotionally, but financially, socially, professionally, psychologically. I straightened. "You wanted to know if you could get away with it. I wanted you to learn you couldn't." Mark found his voice, though it trembled. "What happens now?" I pulled out one final folder. "Now comes the reckoning. Rachel?" My lawyer stepped in from the dining room. Another reveal, another piece of the trap springing closed. "Divorce papers," she announced, handing Mark the documents, "citing adultery, financial misconduct, and dissipation of marital assets. Mrs. Thompson is requesting primary custody of the children, the marital home, and equitable distribution, heavily weighted in her favor given the circumstances. And for you," I said to Sarah, "complete excommunication from my life, from my children's lives. You're not their aunt anymore. You're nothing." Sarah's sneer, the one that had haunted me for months, finally completely died. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. Mark's stammering explanations faded to silence. They'd come here hoping for forgiveness, or at least negotiation. Instead, they got complete, total, or irrevocable exposure and consequences. The truth had hit like a thunderclap, and in its wake, only devastation remained. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. With Tom's evidence, Mark had no defense. Rachel presented the documentation to the family court. 8 months of premeditated affair, $20,000 in dissipated marital assets, planning the identity switch while I underwent emergency surgery. The judge's expression said everything. This wasn't just infidelity, it was calculated cruelty. Primary custody of Lily and Max went to me, with Mark receiving supervised visitation every other weekend. The house stayed mine. Our savings, minus what Mark had stolen, were split 70-30 in my favor. My nest egg, the $150,000 he'd never known about, remained completely untouched and private. I recovered not just the $20,000 he'd spent on Sarah, but additional damages for emotional distress and the cost of the investigation. Total financial impact. I walked away with approximately $280,000 in assets, the house, and full control of my children's lives. Mark got his depleted retirement account and a studio apartment in Northgate, but money was just the beginning. The social consequences rippled outward like stones dropped in still water. I didn't have to say anything. The evidence spoke for itself. When family members asked what happened, I simply said, "Mark had an affair with Sarah for 8 months. While I was recovering from surgery, Sarah pretended to be me for a week, and Mark never noticed." The truth needed no embellishment. My mother called Sarah devastated. "How could you do this to your own sister?" Sarah had no answer. Our father, who'd always favored Sarah, called her dead to him. Extended family took sides swiftly and decisively. Emily, the devoted mother and betrayed wife, versus Sarah, the homewrecker twin. Sarah became a cautionary tale in our social circles, the woman who stole her sister's identity and destroyed her own family in the process. Friends who'd once found her charming now saw her as dangerous. Her social media became a ghost town, unfollowed, untagged, unwelcome. Professionally, Mark's career never recovered. The HR investigation at Tech Vance revealed his affair had caused workplace disruption. The parking lot confrontations, the distracted performance, the failed presentation, combined with the social whispers Jennifer had helped spread through Seattle's tech community, Mark's reputation was permanently tarnished. 6 months after our divorce, he was quietly demoted to senior developer. His former position, 5 years of career advancement erased. The corner office went to someone else. The VP title he'd sacrificed everything for would never be his. For Sarah, professional destruction was even more complete. The documentation of her past thefts, scams, and financial misconduct made her essentially unemployable in any position requiring trust or handling money. She bounced between service jobs, barista, retail clerk, positions where background checks were minimal and reputation mattered less. The boutique lifestyle she'd tried to steal from me crumbled into paycheck-to-paycheck survival. The mirror justice was perfect in its symmetry. Sarah, who'd stolen my identity, lost her own. She was no longer Sarah the charming twin, Sarah the fun aunt, Sarah the woman with potential. She was Sarah the betrayer, Sarah the homewrecker, Sarah who couldn't be trusted. Her identity became her crime. Mark, who'd been blind to the difference between his wife and her imposter, now saw with painful clarity exactly what he'd lost. Too late. He'd traded 8 years of genuine partnership for 6 months of excitement with a woman who'd turned on him the moment pressure arrived. He'd sacrificed a devoted wife who'd supported his career, raised his children, and built their home for someone who blamed him for her problems and disappeared the moment he couldn't provide money. I saw him once, 6 months post-divorce, picking up the kids for his weekend. He looked at me with an expression of profound loss, not just for what we'd had, but for the woman he'd been too blind to see. The woman who'd been strategic enough to dismantle his entire life without breaking a single law. He said quietly while the kids gathered their backpacks. I know I have no right to ask, but did you ever love me? Or was all of this just revenge? I looked at him, this man I'd built a life with, this man who'd shattered it. I loved you enough to give you everything. You loved me so little you couldn't tell when I'd been replaced. I paused. The revenge wasn't the goal, Mark. Justice was. There's a difference. He nodded slowly, understanding finally dawning. I'm sorry, for whatever it's worth. It's worth exactly what your apologies were worth when you wrote them in texts to my sister 6 months into planning your betrayal. Nothing. He left with the kids, shoulders slumped under the weight of consequences he'd earned. And me? I stood in the doorway of my house, fully mine now, and felt something I hadn't felt in 8 months. Peace. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood in my new office on the 15th floor of a downtown Seattle high-rise, looking out over Elliott Bay. The glass reflected a woman I barely recognized, not because I'd changed physically, but because I'd reclaimed something I'd lost years ago, myself. The marketing director position at Summit Brands had fallen into my lap through Jennifer's referral. You're wasted as a consultant, she'd said. Come work with us. Lead a team. Use that strategic mind on something besides revenge. She was right. The skills I'd honed dismantling Mark and Sarah's lives translated perfectly to competitive market strategy. The patience, the planning, the ability to see 10 steps ahead, all of it made me exceptional at my job. My salary was triple what Mark had been making before his demotion. The irony was delicious. Lily and Max thrived. Children are resilient, and with therapy and my focused attention, they'd adjusted to the new normal. Lily, now 7, was confident and strong. Mommy's brave, she told her therapist. She protected us. Max, at 5, barely remembered the drama. What he remembered was that Mom was always there, always present, always fighting for them. Sarah tried to reach out once, 8 months after everything ended. A long email full of apologies, explanations, pleas for forgiveness. "I was jealous," she wrote. "I made terrible choices, but you're my sister, my twin. Can we ever fix this?" I read it once, then deleted it without responding. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. Some relationships aren't worth salvaging. The sister I'd thought I had never really existed. Or if she did, she died the moment Sarah put on my wedding ring and climbed into my bed. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. DNA doesn't obligate mercy. Mark remarried eventually, a woman from his office, kind but cautious. I met her once during a custody exchange. She looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and wariness, like she couldn't decide if I was a victim or a villain. Maybe I was both. Mark seemed content enough, but I saw it in his eyes during every pickup and drop-off. The ghost of what he'd lost haunted him. The life he could have had if he'd just paid attention, if he'd valued what he already possessed instead of what seemed exciting and new. As for me, I dated occasionally. But there was no rush. I'd learned that I didn't need a partner to feel complete. I'd been whole all along. I just hadn't realized it when I was busy being the devoted wife, the supportive sister, the woman who made herself smaller so others could feel bigger. The journey from victim to victor hadn't been quick or explosive. It had been patient, strategic, intentional. I hadn't won through violence or public humiliation. I'd won through the careful, methodical application of consequences, natural ones that looked like karma but were actually justice. Here's what I learned. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet unraveling of lies. Sometimes it's the patient documentation of truth. Sometimes it's letting people destroy themselves with their own choices while you simply arrange the circumstances. Family should uplift you, not undermine you. Marriage should be partnership, not performance. And dignity? Dignity isn't something someone can take from you. It's something you reclaim through patience, strategy, and the refusal to let betrayers define your story. Hey everyone, if this story resonated with you, if you've faced betrayal and found your own path to justice, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me which city you're from and whether you've ever gotten the revenge you deserved. Did karma handle it, or did you have to give karma a little push? Hit that like button if you believe some betrayals deserve epic consequences. Subscribe and turn on notifications because every week I'm bringing you stories about ordinary people who refused to be victims, who stood up and fought back, and who proved that justice, even when it's patient, is always worth the wait. Remember, karma's patient but relentless. And sometimes karma needs a strategic partner. If you agree that betrayal deserves consequences, that people who steal identities, break vows, and destroy trust should face the full weight of their choices, then you're my people. Welcome to the community. Until next time, stay strong, stay strategic, and remember, justice always finds a way.